Okay, so we're going to start on the form validator project, and like I said, this is the first project, so there's going to be a little more hand-holding in terms of explaining like emit and just little things like that that I won't be doing in the rest of the projects. So we'll do the HTML, then the CSS, and then we'll add our JavaScript. So I have three files here: index.html, style.css, and script.js. These three files are going to be in every project. We might have other files in addition to these, might have some assets like images or videos, stuff like that. But we'll always have these three files, okay? So I'm not going to recreate them for every project. And then in the index.html, we're going to use emit and create a boilerplate. So if I just do exclamation and hit enter or tab, it's going to give me my doc type, my HTML tag, head tag, body tag, stuff like that. And I can tab down to the title, and we'll go ahead and change that to form validator. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to link my style sheet, so style CSS, and then I'm going to add my script. So if we do script : src, enter, we can then add a link to our script.js. Okay, so pretty much every project is going to have at least this structure. Now in the body, we're going to have a container class. So with emit, we can do dot container and enter, and that will give us a div with the class of container. Okay, and inside here we're going to have our form, and I'm going to give this form an ID, so I can do a number sign and I'll give it an ID of form, and I'm also going to give it a class of form. Okay, and we don't need an action because we're not actually submitting it to a file. Now this here, how I have the ID of form and a class of form, this is pretty much the format we're going to use throughout the course, where the ID is what we're going to grab onto in the JavaScript and the class is used for styling. Now of course you could just have an ID or just have a class, and you could use that for both styling and the JavaScript, but this tells me clearly that I'm going to be using this element in my JavaScript. So that's kind of the format we'll be following, but it's just preference. So just to be aware of that. So let's create an H2 in here and just say register with us. And we want to have a bunch of fields here. I'm going to wrap in form control. Okay, so the first field is going to be wrapped in form control, and it's going to have a label, let's say for username, and then we're going to have an input here. This input is going to have an ID of username, and it's going to have a type of text, and then we'll add a placeholder to it. And for the placeholder, we'll just say enter username. Now the way that we're going to do the validation is we want to have an error message on that input or under that input. So I'm going to put a small tag right underneath, and this is where the error message is going to go. I'll even just put error message in there for now. Okay, so instead of just displaying the messages above the form, I want it to be at that specific input. All right, so we're just going to grab this form control here, and I'll go ahead and just hold Shift Option down, and it'll copy it down. So that's 2, 3, 4 fields. Okay, the second one is going to be the email, so we'll go ahead and change that, and we'll change this. So if I hold down Shift, I can go ahead and highlight this, and I'll do a Command or Control D to select the next instance of username, and then again Control D and email. And this is the stuff that I won't be explaining like in other projects. So that's email. We could change this to type email, but then it will do validation on its own, default HTML5 validation. But I want to include that in our validator to make sure it's a valid email address. So I'm going to leave this at text for now. And then this is going to be our password. Okay, so we'll go over here and we'll highlight this and Control D and change that to password. And let's change the type to password, and then this one here is going to be confirm password, and this one let's call this one password 2. Okay, except for the placeholder, I don't want to say that. I want to say let's say enter password again. Okay, so those are all our fields, and then underneath the last form control here, we'll have a button, and we'll say submit. All right, so let's save that. And we want to go ahead and open this up. So you could just open the HTML file on your file system, but I would highly recommend using Live Server if you're using VS Code, or using some kind of web server if you have one. So to run this in Live Server, we can just simply right click. Of course, we have to have the extension installed, and then click Open with Live Server. And you'll see down here, actually let me just go back here, you'll see right here it says port 5500. So this is running on our local host on port 5500. If we want to stop the server, we can just click this and it will stop it. But let's look at our browser, and you can see that it's running on our local host, which is our loopback address 127.0.0.1, port 5500, index.html. And this is what it looks like without any CSS, which looks absolutely horrendous. So we're going to go ahead and just make this smaller, because as we're writing our HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it will auto load here as we save our files, and we'll be able to see our changes. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and jump into our style sheet and add our CSS to make this form look decent.